Okay, hi Marissa, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I am very happy to be here.
It's our pleasure to have you here. And we're going to be talking about your book today, and your book is called Decide Your Simple System, subtitle For Getting It Right the First Time. I read through your bio, and it looks like you were a nurse, or are you still a nurse, or you retired?
No, I still am a nurse. Matter of fact, I worked into the weekend this last weekend. I got home from my base at about, I don't know, 6:30 in the evening, 7.
Are you a stroke survivor? Is
I
that what?
am. I am a stroke survivor, yes.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad you survived. Um,
Yeah.
This might sound like a slightly morbid question, but I think people who have never had one, what does a stroke feel like?
Well, it felt like an altered reality. For me, when I had my stroke, I was at work and we were having our morning briefing, and all of a sudden, I was very dizzy and lightheaded, and it seemed like the room was changed. I was looking across the room at a window, and the window began to slide down the wall to the left. And, windows are stationary. And I was like, wow, I don't know what's happening here, but this all of a sudden I feel like I'm not in the right space and time. So I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, shook my head, and kind of tried to shake it off. And I opened my eyes again. And once again, the window was sliding down to the left. And then I realized my hand was heavy. My right hand was very heavy. It was tingly. And I couldn't make my fingers operate quite like they should be. And then I began to realize I think I'm having a problem. I don't know what's wrong, but it's not going away. And so then I told my coworker, I think I'm having trouble.
You never lost consciousness.
I did not lose consciousness. There are people whose strokes are of a different nature or larger than the one I had who do, but I did not lose consciousness. I just realized that reality around me was very altered and I didn't feel like I was in the right space and time.
Was there any pain?
I did not have pain. Some people, depending on the type of stroke, like with a hemorrhagic stroke, for example, mine was an ischemic embolic stroke. So those are two different types of stroke. With hemorrhagic strokes, there will be pain. They will get what's often referred to as a thunderclap headache, which is a sudden onset of just excruciating head pain. I did not have that.
It seems to me people that I've known that have had them lose the ability on one side or the other. And some people,
Right.
they would speak out of the one side of their mouth, and one side they might have difficulty with their right hand, or their left hand doesn't function well anymore. Do you have any of those symptoms?
I don't have any remaining deficit. At the time when the stroke was evolving, I did have deficit on the right side. My right hand was not quite as operational as it should have been. I felt like my right leg was weak. Um, and and I was definitely felt very, very dizzy. Like, fortunately, when it happened, I was not standing, I was seated in a chair. So had I been standing, I might have had difficulty maintaining an upright posture and balance, and stumbled or fallen. But I was seated in a chair, fortunately. But yes, oftentimes with strokes, there will be deficit on one side or the other, depending on which vessel in the brain has been affected. So, and bear in mind too that the nerves in the brain, so if you have the major impact on the left side of your head, which was the case for me, all of the nerves cross over in the brainstem to the other side. So that's why you'll get the contralateral side visual changes, like somebody looking at you is like, oh yeah, her right side of her face is drooping or whatever. Yeah.
So, was that the motivation to write this book? Is the book somehow related to your stroke?
This one is not. I I did. There is a component of decision making that went on with my stroke, and I debated a lot about whether or not to bring that into this book. And I decided, no, I would save that for another book. So I may write about my experience in another book at some time. Um, but, with regard to decision making in my stroke, what I would like to put out there to people is the biggest and best decision that they can make if they are having a problem is to say something, speak up, get some kind of attention to yourself that you are in trouble. Because in my case, my doing so meant that it afforded my workmate to make her set of decisions, which were absolutely on point. She did not hesitate at all. She jumped up out of her chair, ran and got her car keys. And so, the pilot, I'm a flight nurse. So the pilot sitting across from me, she was like, John, put us out of service and help me get her to the car. And she took me immediately to the hospital. And within, I would say 20 minutes, I had thrombolytics infusing and breaking up the clots for me. So that's why I got the good outcome I got. But it was all because of this domino effect of decision making that went on. And the first decision was mine. Either write it out and tell things clear or speak up and say something. Admit that you're having a problem. And I did.
So, what does the book actually apply to? Is it
So
general, like general life decisions?
it it's about general decision making. I decided to take the decision making process that we use in nursing and medicine and make it pull out some of the industry specifics because that's not going to be really useful to people that are out in the world out there. And my bigger concern is for young people. I think that's a group of people that has more decisions coming at them than almost any other. The other large decision making group are people going into retirement. But young people, when they're just getting started, they've got a lot to decide, and I checked in with my niece and asked her, do you get any instruction in school about how to make decisions? And she said, no, we don't get any, because I showed her this book and I was like, what about this resonates with you? She's 15, she's in high school. She said, Annie Marissa, they teach us what to decide, but they don't teach us about how. Like the step by step, this is really good because we're not getting any of that in school. And so I feel like for young people, it's huge, not just high school students, but even college and young adult. When you get to college, you've got to decide on a major. Well, if you arrive at your freshman year and you have no idea, then maybe having a tool to help you make some decisions is helpful. If you get to graduation and you're like, okay, now what? Where do I want to apply for jobs? Where do I want to live? Having a tool to help sort of guide through that process and weed out the junk might be helpful. And so that was my big motivation. And I realized after my stroke, this is where the stroke comes in too. I don't have unlimited time left. That stroke really compressed time and made me realize that the quality of our decisions does exactly that. It either compresses our time or it lengthens and widens it out and maybe wastes it. And the only thing that we have that we cannot renew, we can renew just about any other resource that we have. We can filter oxygen and refresh it and make it usable again. We can do the same with water. We can generate heat. We can do all kinds of things to our environment that, utilizes the resources there and sort of recycles them. But time is the one that we cannot. And so using a decision making, which is our superpower as humans, no other mammals on the planet have this power. Using that resource well and exercising it is going to make maximal use of our time. And when I had my stroke, I realized I don't have like unlimited time left. I need to speak up and share what I've had on my heart and in my mind. Otherwise, I'm not going to have the chance.
Your subtitle is For Getting It Right the First Time. Is there one particular thing that you found in your research that a lot of people get wrong the first time? One, like a specific example, perhaps?
Well, I think the one thing that people get wrong is they think that if they've made a poor decision or they've maybe made a series of poor decisions or had a history of poor decision making, that they just suck at it and they can't make good decisions. And that's wrong. That's wrong. You can learn to do differently. You can learn to improve. You can learn to do better. And the example that I would cite from that about that is from my own personal experience. I am an adoptee, and my birth mother got pregnant with me when she was 16. And I think that everyone can agree that that's pretty much not a great decision at the age of 16. But it was a decision that was entered into by her in a very emotional state. You know, you're swept away by the passion of the moment, and it's all very emotional. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, boom, she's like, oh, snap, I'm pregnant. And she had to make the next right decision. And for her at that time, back in the late 60s, she decided that she didn't feel right about trying to find an abortion, which were available back then, but they were not legal, so they were not safe medically at all. And she decided, well, I should just put this baby up for adoption. But that decision didn't come easy. I mean, she told me that she went back and forth through the time that she was pregnant with me, trying to make that decision. And I'm here to say that in her example and in my example, she did make the next best decision, which was to put me up for adoption. Ultimately, that was where she landed, and that's what she committed to. It was very, very difficult. There were no safety nets for kids that were pregnant back then. There are hardly any now, but there really weren't any back then. However, she happened to fall into the right set of circumstances, and the OB doctor that she was seeing was very compassionate and told her he would help her find a placement for me. And thank goodness he did, because, even up till this last weekend, having done so made me available to serve others by the life-saving skills that I've learned as a nurse. And none of that would have been possible if I wasn't here. So I think that it's possible for people to learn to do better and to make better decisions. And that's what happened in my own personal experience.
Well, it's interesting how things have changed so much, because 100 years ago, my grandmother was 16 when she had my father, and she was married to my grandfather, who was 18, and everybody thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, right. Back then it was wonderful,
Right.
because you're absolutely correct. People were typically married back then at those ages.
Yeah.
And
now,
but that's not the case now.
Now, if your 16-year-old, you said your niece, I mean, if she came to you now and said, oh, by the way, I'm getting married tomorrow, you'd be horrified.
I would be like, wait, are you sure? Like, yes.
Like, what did you just take? Are you on drugs? Is there some problem?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like completely unheard of at this point for a sick, because there's so many more choices. I mean,
well, and we all know that kids continue to grow up so much more now than they did back then. But back then, you were fairly well considered an adult by that age.
well, and the choices for women were much, much less than
so much
than
limited.
they are
Yeah.
now. Yeah. Marissa, we are just about out of time. So the book, Decide Your Simple System, has it been released?
It is. It is out and available on Amazon. And so I encourage anybody that would be looking for a tool like this. It's a good graduation gift. It's a good Christmas gift. It's a good, just any kind of gift. It's available to you on Amazon.
Last question, do you have a website that you want to give out?
I do. I have a website. It's called wiselifestrategies.com. And you can go there to find out more information about me, about the book, about things that I offer and what I do. I do have a free sort of decision making scoring tool. If anybody is interested in that, they can shoot me an email at wiselifestrategies.com, and I will send them a copy of the decision making scoring tool if they just want to do a little bit of self evaluation. And I welcome anybody to come check it out.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a nice conversation. I'm glad that you recovered from your stroke.
Yeah.
And best of luck with everything in the book.
Thank you. And thank you for your time today.